Hey y'all, welcome back for another Epic on a Budget deck list. Today's deck is based around Chandra Flameshaper, which is a very epic planeswalker with a number of interesting abilities, and it's just a really fun card to play. So we're going to dive into that in a second. This does cost under $20 and using TCG player prices. If you click the link in the description below for the deck list, it will likely say something else until you change it to TCG player prices. And you'll get something around that. It always fluctuates a little bit, especially with basic lands changing, but you can always just optimize that by hitting extras and optimize printings. So anyways, let's get into it. First off, the card that we're building the deck around is Chandra Flameshaper. It costs 5 red, so a total of 7 mana, and enters with 6 loyalty counters. It's got 3 abilities. You can +2 loyalty counters to add red, so triple red, and you exile the top 3 cards of your library. You can choose one, and you can play that card this turn. Okay, so you can play land from that. You can cast, whatever spell you found. You do pay the mana cost. You do pay the cost associated with that spell, but you can play that card this turn. Okay, so that's nice. Gives you a little bit of mana. Gives you cards, especially the cards is relevant. The mana is occasionally useful, but once you ramp up to 7 mana, adding another 3 is not necessarily the most relevant all the time. Okay, the cards though are. Next up we have +1 to create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it has haste and at the beginning of the end step sacrifice this token. Okay, so that just lets you copy whatever whatever creatures you have in play, and that's one of the things we're going to be optimizing for in this deck. Okay, so we'll take a look at some very interesting creatures we have lined up to copy. The other one is -4, and Chandra deals 8 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and/or planeswalkers. Okay, so that's a very important ability. Obviously, you can do that as soon as you play her. You can just go down to 2 loyalty and often wipe your opponent's board, or at least take care of any problematic creatures your opponents have. In most cases, honestly, that'll take care of multiple creatures. Okay, so that's very useful. We're not going to be optimizing specifically around that ability because it's just really good on its own. You don't need to waste a lot of other cards trying to make it better. So yes, you could do stuff with damage multipliers or whatever, but I just don't really feel like that's necessary. However, the +1 to create a token, like I said, we're going to be getting some pretty good mileage out of that one. Okay, and then the getting cards, that's also one that just takes care of itself, and you just get cards. That's good, right? So let's take a look at the creatures. We have several. We also have, of course, lands, and this is a land on the back. You'll notice we don't have a terribly high land count, so 22, including this one. And that's because we have a lot of ramp. Okay, so I'm going to actually take a look at categories. This will make things a little simpler to look at, and we'll look at multiple categories in a minute. Okay, so here we've got our lands. Let's go with those first. We've got 9 forests and 3 mountains. Okay, because yes, our main card is red, but a lot of our ramp is green, and so we need more green in the early game. Okay, we only really need 2 red ever, and it's all 4 and above. Sorry, 5 and above, really. And this thing does cost 4, but you only need 1 red for that. Okay, so you really don't need as much red in the early game. So we have more forests than mountains. Okay, we also have Rootbound Crag, which enters tapped unless you control mountain or forest, and it taps for either red or green. So this is really nice because then if you have basically any of your other lands, it enters untapped. Okay, because Cinderglade is our other dual land, and it is a mountain forest. Okay, so it taps to add red or green, and enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Okay, so if you already have 2 of forests or mountains, basic ones, then Cinderglade enters untapped, which is convenient, and sometimes that won't work out. Oftentimes it will, but it's just nice to at least have the possibility of it entering untapped. Okay, and even if you just have a Cinderglade, it'll make Root Brown Crag enter untapped. So that's really pretty nice. A lot of our lands can enter untapped. Stump Stomp is a land on the backside. This one is the only one that always enters the battlefield tapped. It adds red or green. Okay. On the front side, though, it's a sorcery for 1 and either red or green. So just 2 mana, and target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Okay, so a little bit of removal in there with the dual land. Okay, so those are our 22 lands. Then we have ramp spells, which most of them are fairly similar. Elvish Mystic, Fintorn Elves, and Llanowar Elves are all basically the exact same card. They're functional reprints. So they all cost a single red, single green, for a 1/1 that taps to add green to your mana pool. Now the reason we have just 3 play sets of those is it's just really efficient, and very consistent if you have 12 copies of them, right? And we also are not trying to get up to anything past 7 mana, so we don't need to go as heavy into the crazy elvish mana ramp that's possible. Okay, and we want to play some other stuff too besides just elves. And so then we also have Solemn Simulacrum, which is 4 mana for a 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And when this creature dies, you may draw a card. Okay, so that's pretty nice because it just ramps us with lands, so that sticks around, and we can search for a mountain or forest, whatever we need. I generally default to forest if I already have 2 or 3 red sources, but whatever works, right? Oftentimes you're just picking up a mountain for second or third red source. Okay, but it also draws you a card when it dies. So this thing works really well as a blocker, often just a chump blocker, because you're getting value out of it, right? You get value out of it when it enters, you get value out of it when it dies, and it protects your life total, right? So super nice. You also need blockers for keeping your planeswalker alive, so this will serve as a blocker for Chandra as well. And that's one reason why we're using creature ramp instead of anything else, is because we need to be able to protect our planeswalker. And so any extra mana dorks, mana elves or whatever that we have when we have our planeswalker out can just act as blockers, including just chump blockers, to keep Chandra alive. One other really nice thing about using Solemn Simulacrum with Chandra is that if you create a token of Solemn Simulacrum, then you get to search your library for a basic land, and then at the end of turn, when you sacrifice Solemn Simulacrum, the token copy of Solemn Simulacrum, or if it dies in combat, then you get to draw a card. So you actually can use Chandra's +1 to get 2 cards of value. So 1 land, then 1 off the top of your library, which is pretty nice, and definitely just helps you stay ahead on advantage in the game. Okay. Then the last one for ramp is actually a very large creature with very high mana cost, and it has a channel ability. So this is the first of a kind of card that I was very happy to include in this deck, because we have so much ramp trying to get up to 7 mana. That can end up with kind of an awkward situation where you just have a bunch of ramp and nothing to do with it. And so what we're trying to do here is double up on threats and ramp. Okay, so this costs 4 green for 6/5 with trample. That will do a lot of damage. Attacking, it can also block very nicely. It just is a really good creature to have if you have the mana to cast it, right? And obviously it's nothing incredibly special, but a 6/5 with trample does some work, right? However, it also has this channel ability, so you can pay 2 and a green and discard it, and search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. So this actually is a 3-mana ramp spell, essentially, okay? Which is a little bit, expensive for just a ramp. Like rampant growth is basically this same effect, but it only costs 1 and a green. However, rampant growth is only rampant growth. Like that's all it is. It can only ever get you a basic land. Whereas this, once you have enough lands, it's a threat. Okay, so that's super valuable. Next up we have, these aren't really ramp spells because they don't really give you another mana. However, they are mana support, they're land because they can tutor for land. So Oliphant and Generous End both have a land cycling ability. So for cycling, for example, you can pay 1 and discard it to search your library for a forest card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. Okay. And Oliphant has mountain cycling, so it does the same thing, but for mountains. Okay. Now, one nice thing is that, yes, you can search for basic land. You can also search for Cinderglade. So either Generous End or Oliphant can get you either color using Cinderglade because it's a mountain forest. All right. And since it often comes to play untapped, then you don't even have to worry about that sometimes. Okay. Though occasionally you'll just get the basic land, right? Because you want it untapped. All right. And you can do that at instant speed. So you can do that at the end of your opponent's turn, for example, leaving it mana for something else. Okay. Or just wait so that your opponent doesn't know what you're doing with your mana, right? But they're also both really good creatures if you get up to 6 mana. This costs 5 and a green, and it's a 5/7 with reach. So phenomenal blocker. And when Generous End enters the battlefield, create a food token, which is an artifact with tap. Pay 2 mana, sacrifice it, and you gain 3 life. So that's kind of nice because, say you take some damage in the early game because it took you a little longer to get up to 7 mana. This can actually, cushion your life total by just blocking and also giving you actual life from the food. It won't always be the best thing to do, but you can create a token copy of Generous End with Chandra, which will then leave you with a food token. And of course, that token can tack in for 5, and then you'll sacrifice it at the end of the turn, but you get to keep the food token. So that's one way you can actually just increase your life total, if that's what the situation calls for. Okay, Oliphant is more of an aggressive threat, so it costs 5 and a red, and has trample, and whenever it attacks another target creature you control, gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. Okay, so that's nice because you can actually just attack with it for 6 trample damage, but you can also make one of your other creatures bigger and give it trample, right? So super nice little card here. Okay, we'll get into a couple of interesting things to give trample to, but Generous End is a pretty good option, right? Making it a 7/7 with trample would be pretty good, right? So they even just pair well together. All right, so let's go to our other options here. Similarly with Generous End, Dragon Trainer creates a token when it enters. In this case, it's the token that's kind of the threat. So it's a 3 red for a 1/1. And when it enters, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So this is nice on a number of levels. One nice thing is just that you get 2 different creatures with it. So like I said, blocking is kind of important in many situations with this deck. And so you have 2 blockers, including one that you don't necessarily care a whole lot about, right? Because you can totally just chump block with the 1/1 and yay, yeah, you're doing well. You still have your 4/4 with flying, right? And also, of course, the dragon with flying is great because that can block other things with flying. However, 4/4 dragons do a pretty good job of attacking, and that's very important. Also, when you do get Chandra out, Dragon Trainer is a great thing to copy because you get to keep the dragon token that it will make when it enters. So you just have, like, if you have Dragon Trainer and it's made a dragon token, then you just make a copy of Dragon Trainer, you get a second copy of the dragon, and you sacrifice the token Dragon Trainer into turn, but you get to keep that dragon that came in, right? And so you can do that every turn to just get another dragon every single turn, right? So that's a very good way of just building up value, right? We like lasting value from the temporary tokens, right? Of course, another option though, especially if your opponent is low on life, is just to copy the dragon, because then you'll just get another 4/4 flying dragon with haste, right? So that definitely could be a way to just end the game. So lots of different options there, just an all-around very useful card. All right, now over here, we've got some other good removal options. We've got Twin Shot Sniper. This one is a 2/3 with reach, so another good blocker. It does cost 3 and a red, which is a little bit expensive, but not too bad, right? So this is one of the things you can cast if you don't manage to ramp up to 5, 6, 7 mana. Right? You can just cast it for 4, and it has reach, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. So it's a nice little bit of removal there. It also has a channel ability, so you can pay 1 and a red and discard it, and it deals 2 damage to any target. So it's really like a 2 mana removal spell, or a creature that also does removal and blocking. So it's just a flexible card there that we can use for a lot of different things, and it can save us in the early game from taking too much damage from little creatures or creatures with really powerful abilities. And it can also pair well with Chandra because she can make a copy of it every turn, and then you get just 2 damage to any target every turn. Right, so not too bad. Meteor Golem is a pretty epic card in this deck. So it costs 7 mana, and it's a 3/3. And when it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls. So obviously it's pretty nice on its own. Just if you get up to 7 mana, you can just play it and get rid of whatever obnoxious thing your opponent has played, and it's any non-land permanent. Okay, and it also is a 3/3, which means it can block a decent amount, and it can even attack a little bit sometimes, right? You obviously won't be attacking too often with it. Just a 3/3 if your opponent has stuff on their board, but especially once you make a token copy of it, the token comes in, destroys something, and then swings in for 3, which can often get a little bit of damage in, which is pretty nice. And you don't care if it's killed because you're going to sacrifice at the end of the turn anyway. All right, so that little combo with Meteor Golem and Chandra make a pretty hard lock for your opponent to get out of in many cases, because if they don't have removal for Chandra or the Meteor Golem, you will just destroy a non-land permanent of theirs every single turn and attack, right? And that's like, once you get those 2 out on the battlefield, you don't even have to put any mana into it. So every turn you're destroying a non-land permanent, attacking for 3, and doing some other stuff, right? So that's a very, very epic combo to put together, and I've definitely won games with that. Okay, and next up we have Inferno Titan, which is a super epic card for this deck. So it costs 4 red, and it's a 6/6 with pair red, and Inferno Titan gets +1/+0 until end of turn, which is classically nicknamed fire breathing. Okay, we're not really focused on that particularly. However, occasionally you'll pump it by a couple, right? But we don't have tons and tons and tons of red mana kicking around necessarily. So yeah, we're not really focused on that too much. However, whenever Inferno Titan enters or attacks, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose on 1, 2, or 3 targets. Okay, and that can target your opponent or creatures, planeswalkers, whatever. All right, and so this is kind of like backup Chandras in a way, because one of the things you're most likely to do with Chandra is play it and then immediately deal 8 damage to stuff. Okay, especially if you're just a little bit behind on board, which often happens when you're ramping in the early game. Then she'll get you back to a good spot there. Inferno Titan does a very similar thing, where as soon as it enters, it destroys, it takes care of some of their creatures, and then sticks around. This thing, though, is really nice because it's a 6/6 creature, so it can actually block and attack and whatnot. And when it attacks, it does it again. Okay, now the really fun thing is, though, that it pairs very well with Chandra, because you can create a token. When the token enters, it deals 3 damage divided as you choose, and then that token has haste, so you would attack with it, and you deal another 3 damage divided as you choose, and it's a 6/6 that's attacking, right? So if you have Inferno Titan out, when you play Chandra, you're actually likely to just create a token copy of Inferno Titan rather than dealing 8 damage, because in many cases you'll actually get more damage in. Obviously, there are going to be cases where that's not the best thing, but in many cases they will be. Okay, and that's a very good way to end the game pretty quickly, is attacking with Inferno Titans, and especially multiple copies of them. Okay, so that's basically the whole deck. Okay, we'll take a look this other view, categories multiple, just to see. I've kind of separated this out by their purposes. Okay, so obviously Chandra. Okay, and one of her main purposes in this deck is to copy stuff, right? With, of course, a ton of other options and utility. Okay, but we've got 26 creatures that are just really good at blocking. Obviously, Inferno Titans, for example, and Oliphants can block, but I just picked some of the ones that are like you don't necessarily want to be attacking with all the time, right? You've got 8 different ways to draw cards or pseudo draw cards. You've got like 13 things that are really good at ending the game fairly quickly. Most of these have 5 or greater power. As a small side note, using Oliphant to give Inferno Titan trample is a pretty good option. Anyways, so here you see your ramp. We've got 14 different removal things because Stump Stomp and Chandra are definitely removal, as well as all these others that we already looked at as removal. And yeah, so it's kind of how I categorize them. Okay, so we're going to go to the playtester now and see how it goes. All right, so here we've got 2 red sources in our hand and 2 green sources, so that's nice. We've got land search or threat. We've got a threat removal. We've got another threat. So this actually looks pretty good, and because we have a ramp as well. So this looks like a pretty solid hand. I would keep it. Okay. So let's start out with a forest and Landward Elves. Okay, and let's go mountain, because this will come into play untapped next turn. And we will play a Fintorn Elves. And I don't think I want to land cycle, because I'll have enough mana next turn for Dragon Trainer anyway. So let's see. Play Cinderglade, and then play Dragon Trainer, and make a dragon. Okay, so it's turn 3. We've got 5 mana. We've got a little blocker. We've got a 4/4 flying dragon. That's pretty good. Okay, so then doesn't really much matter which land we play. And then we can play our Oliphant. That's why we kept it around, right? And we can swing in with a dragon. Okay. Next turn, we've got a Meteor Golem coming online. Okay, so it destroys something. And then we can swing with both of these and give the dragon +2, +0, and trample. Okay, so now we're swinging for a total of 12 trample damage, right? So we'll say they double block or they block Oliphant. Well, we'll say they block Oliphant and it dies, but some of their stuff dies too. Okay, and we took out their biggest thing, so they probably don't have terribly much left. All right, perfect. So here we go. We can play Chandra. Okay, and now we've got a couple of good options for what to copy. I would say probably if they have a bunch of little creatures, then I would 100% just -4 it, deal 8 damage, right? Divide as you choose to take out all the creatures. If they've got a small number of things like 1, 2 things, I'm more likely to go for a Meteor Golem kind of option, right? Especially if it's not creatures. Okay, so we'll do that one, and we'll just make a copy of Meteor Golem. Okay, and then that token will attack, and we'll attack in with a dragon as well. Okay, and we'll say we'll leave the other ones up to block or just not die so that I can copy them next turn. Okay, and so let's see, they take 4, maybe they jump block the Meteor Golem so they don't die next turn. Okay, and Chandra is now at 7 loyalty, so she's not going to die very easily. Which is one nice thing about having a lot of really good things to get value from +1, the +1 ability, is that then you can do that effectively the turn you play her instead of just always -4ing her. Because at 2 loyalty, she's pretty fragile, but at 7, she's not very fragile, right? That's a difference of 5 loyalty. Okay, so next up, sure, Bound Crag. And now in this case, if your opponent really is at 6 life, you probably can just copy a dragon or a Meteor Golem and win the game that way. You can also probably win the game by playing a twin shot sniper, dealing 2 damage directly to them, and then making a copy of the twin shot sniper, dealing another 2 damage directly to them, and then swinging in. Right, that'll probably get the job done. And see, so we just used the +1 in this game. We totally could have used the -4, and definitely, at this point, if we didn't win the game right now, or if we hadn't drawn that, maybe we would have used the +2 to draw cards, because you can see exiling 3 cards, bang, we got a dragon trainer out of that, right? So it's very all-around useful card, Chandra. But I think that's really fun to maximize that +1. You get some really fun plays out of that, I think. So anyways, that's that. Alrighty. And that seems honestly like a pretty good representation of how this deck plays out. The early game, you get, some ramp going, some combination of land ramp and creature ramp. You just stay alive with some blockers and whatnot. And pretty soon you just start playing really big things and removing your opponent's board, and then you win. It's pretty fun. Hope you enjoy it, and definitely if you build it, please let me know how it goes. And please subscribe. That lets YouTube and me know that you're enjoying the content, and also helps you see the next videos that I'll be coming out with. You can check out other Epicana budget decks that I've already published, but I'll be putting some more out in a few days. So anyways, until next time, have a good one.